Guys, welcome back. It is late January and it's that time of the year where I have figured up all my expenses and income from last year and focusing on my expenses and what they may be for this upcoming year in 2025. So I thought I would put together a video here of what farmers have to pay for. So I'm going to talk about what I have to pay for as a commercial fruit and vegetable farmer. And I'm not going to really talk about the dollar amounts, but mainly what all the categories of the different things that we have to pay for. So there is a long list. And if you're in business for yourself, or if you have any kind of business, then some of these will be similar, but some things will be specific to farming and the type of farming that I do. All right, I'm going to leave out any type of land or land costs, rental, ownership, property taxes. I'm not really going to focus on that. And I'm not going to talk about living expenses because we do have to pay ourselves something, usually every month to cover our living expenses. So these are primarily tangible type things that you have to purchase and provide every year to produce your crop, and all the things that maybe are directly involved in that and kind of indirectly involved also. Think of farmers, you think of tractors. So obviously we have to have tractors, all different shapes and sizes, and whether they're paid for or not paid for, there's a cost associated just to keeping them running. Whatever kind of implement you see us using all throughout the year sitting around, we've had to obviously purchase at some point. All right, we're gonna go for a little ride for a little bit. We're gonna talk about some of these things. Usually, when you think about farmers' expenses, if you were gonna start in a chronological order, the first thing most people would think about would be seed. So I've talked a little bit about that in my video, a couple of videos back. But the seed is obviously, you got to have seed, and seed is something that has gone up considerably in price over the last few years, as has most everything else. In fact, there's probably not anything that I'm going to talk about that was cheaper now than it was any time before. It's just gradually going up and up and up. That's kind of a problem across the whole U.S. But you got to have seed. We order most of our seed early in the year and kind of book it or reserve it on some things that, especially on some things that are a little harder to get. So we haven't had too much of a problem anytime recently, as far as being able to get the kind of seed that we want. So you want to, we try to get the best, we don't try to skimp on the seed. That's just something you don't want to skimp on. Chemicals is a huge expense. Vegetable crops take so much more taking care of and babying than row crops do. So we spend a lot of money on insecticides and fungicides and herbicides, and we're following the label. We're not doing anything we're not supposed to. I probably spray more than I probably need to. I'm not spraying more than what the label says, but my intervals probably are a little closer than maybe they need to be, but it's kind of like insurance. You have to protect these crops, and people that say they don't want any of their crops sprayed or anything has never grown them for a living, especially in the South, because you will get eaten alive by disease and bugs if you did nothing. And that's just a fact. And so, like I said, we're doing it by the label, so we're not doing anything we're not supposed to. And probably 99% of every produce item you've ever bought on the side of the road or at the grocery store has been sprayed for disease and insects. So that's just how it is. Fertilizer, we have to obviously have fertilizer. We don't do any kind of chicken manure or anything like that. It's all just regular fertilizer. The fertilizer cost can really swing mostly up, not down, based on worldwide supply and demand and that kind of thing. So you're just kind of at the mercy of them. We get all of our chemicals and fertilizer from one supplier, our Helena Chemical Company, and they handle all that for us. There's really not a whole lot of shopping around. There's a couple of more suppliers that are a little smaller, but those guys take care of me, and I stick with them. You might save a little bit here and there, but for the most part, the prices are going to be pretty much the same, no matter where you look. We're talking about seed, and then everything that we plant in the greenhouse that we transplant in the field, we have to have soil mix, and we have to have insert trays and flats, and all those things have to be bought every year, to grow your transplants in. And if you watched our video last fall that we had on our greenhouse plastic, we completely redid the whole greenhouse, and that's an expense, but that's something that's only going to happen every 5 years or so, barring any type of storm. But the greenhouse has to be heated. For us, we use natural gas heaters, and that is an expense that can get pretty high depending on your temperatures. We don't start till about the third week of February, so generally the bitter cold temperatures are usually not happening too much while we're trying to grow our transplants. When it gets time to lay plastic in the field, that's a very big expense. We have not only the plastic mulch, but we have the T-tape, drip tape, and then we also fumigate all of the beds. So we have that gas that goes underneath the plastic at the time while we're laying it. So to do all that is a big expense. That's a one-time deal every year, usually in March. All of our hoses that we set up on the plastic, whether it's the main lay flat 3-inch hoses or the 1.5-inch black oval hose, we get 2 years out of those, and we replace all of that every 2 years. All of our poly pipe that we water all of our fields that are furrow irrigated, you have to replace that poly pipe every year. You just get one season out of it. And so the poly pipe is not cheap, and that's an expense to go along with the irrigation. Now, obviously, the irrigation wells have to run off of something. Some people use diesel. We use electric. So all of our wells run off of electricity. Also, when we're harvesting, we have to put everything into something. You've seen my videos recently on boxes. We spend a lot of money on boxes. Not only boxes, but also sacks. these big green mesh bags that we put the cabbage in. We also put sweet corn in and sell it in those sacks, and purple hull peas are all harvested in those sacks. Now, a lot of them will dump them out and shell them and reuse those sacks, but the sacks that are sold unshelled of the purple hull peas will go out the door in those green sacks. Also, we have cardboard bins, and we have a lot of sweet potato wood bins. You've seen the videos on that. Those have to be repaired. And the cardboard bins, we sometimes can get them for almost nothing used, but sometimes we have to buy them new, and those can obviously get pretty expensive. Usually on stuff like that, you pay just as much for shipping as you do for the actual product, especially on something like that that's so heavy that comes in on pallets. All right, nobody likes to pay insurance, right? That is something that we have to have on all of our equipment and trucks and buildings, and we have to have liability insurance for all the people that come through here and things like that. Also, labor is probably our number one expense. We have to have workman's comp. You got your payroll taxes. Some of our labor is classified as H-2A labor, goes through the H-2A government program with the work visas. That's pretty expensive. You got to go through a lawyer every year. There's tons of paperwork, fees, lawyer fees. All that has to be paid every year. And you have to provide transportation back and forth from wherever they're coming from. Ours come from Mexico. Well, you don't have to provide transportation, you have to pay for transportation. And then once they're here, you have to provide housing. And so I have to have housing that has been inspected by Department of Labor. So there's, upkeep on all that. And as well as I also provide additional housing for non-H-2A labor. The folks that I have that are here all the time. So the housing is like being a rent house person, because you have to keep it up, and appliances and all those things break, and plumbing, and you have to constantly keep all those things up and going, just like you would at your house. The H-2A is something that I avoided as long as I could, but finding seasonal help is a whole lot harder than it used to be, and so we started doing the H-2A program. Now, it gives you peace of mind because the guys are coming and they're going to be here, and all that. It's just expensive, and it's if I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't, but I pretty much have to do it. And so there's lots of farmers that have gone that route. Utilities. Pay for the utilities, obviously, and all the housing and my shop and anything in the field that we have. Most of the field stuff is going to be connected to the irrigation wells, but mostly electricity, and then we pay for water, and not in the field, but around the shop and the houses and all, and then of course natural gas too. The maintenance that we do on everything is a big expense, and that's maintenance on everything. Tractors, trucks, buildings, greenhouse, implements, all of the bearing, everything that takes bearings and all that stuff that gets worn, blades, belts, all that. Forklift, little Kubota, big tractors. You know, maintenance is something that we're always doing year-round on something, and that kind of goes into repairs too. A lot of the maintenance will be preventative, and then you know, we repair everything that we can without having to call in the mechanics, and those guys are so expensive. I mentioned it I think in the video a couple of videos ago. If not, you know, like for instance, we have case equipment in the case dealership here. It is $600 for them to leave their dealership, pull in my gate. If all they did was say hello, turn around and go back, $600. So that's not counting the time that they have to repair as well as the parts. So those kind of things are just astronomical. And parts, just parts in general, are just so expensive. It's amazing what a little sack full of bearings will cost. You know, they don't look like they're much of nothing, but it can easily be, you know, hundreds of dollars. You know, the tractors don't run on air, so they have diesel, and all the trucks obviously gas, propane on the forklift. We do all of our own maintenance on the tractors and trucks as far as filters and oil, and I've got a table at the shop right now that has, you know, over $1,000 worth of tractor filters just sitting there waiting for us to put them on. So those things are things that you don't like to do, but you need to do to, you know, to keep your equipment running and in good shape. There's an expense you might not think of. We keep several portable toilets in the field. This one is right here by the peach orchard, and we have them scattered out, and those have to be serviced every week, and you pay rental on those, but you gotta have a place for all the help to go to the bathroom. All right, I came down here to the peach orchard to look at something. Now I'm headed back. Another expense is tires. Everything has tires: tractors, trailers, trucks, implements. We spend a lot on tires. Usually sometimes they'll, you know, especially on the trailers, we'll have a tire that gets bad and we'll change it, but a lot of times on the tractors you just have to change them every, you know, so many years, and you don't ever want to have to do too many in the same year, so we kind of spread it out. But tires are expensive. I just put 2 new front tires on a big Magnum tractor, and I think it was $3,000 and something for the 2 of them, and that was kind of with the generic brand. So tires are expensive. The guidance that we have, RTK, on our big Magnum tractor, that doesn't come free. You have to pay a subscription every year, and so that's paid annually, and that's another expense, but that's worth it. Obviously we could get by without it, because for years everybody got by without it, but then once you get it, you realize, how did I ever live without it? So that's kind of an extra feature that for me pays for itself. But all the things I've mentioned so far are you pretty much have to have. I mean, you try to start cutting things, and you know, what are you going to cut? You can't cut your labor. You got to have them, because all of our crops are hand harvested, and so, and a lot of hand work in between all of the harvesting. Some of them are hand planted, and you know, you have things like to buy like tomato string and all that kind of stuff. I didn't mention any of that kind of stuff, but you got to have your labor. Well, are you going to cut your seed? No. Are you going to cut your fertilizer? No. Are you going to cut your chemicals? Yeah, maybe you could cut a little bit, and you can use generics and different things, but for me, I'm probably not cutting too much on my chemicals. Well, are you going to cut your insurance? Well, no, then you're really taking a risk. Things like parts and repairs and equipment, and you got to have that. If something breaks, you got to fix it, or either throw it away and buy a new one. Utilities, you can't cut anything there. That's pretty much a fixed cost. Things like poly pipe and plastic and T-tape, and you got to have those things. You might could shop around a little, but it's you pretty much got to have it. In the summer, it takes lots of trucks for us to get everything done. Well, I can't get rid of the trucks. I got to keep them running, and they're in pretty good shape. We don't use them, most of them, too much. They're mostly just seasonal, but got to have a forklift, and so you don't want a piece of junk. You got to have something good that you can depend on, because I got to have it. I can't operate without that. The tractors, yeah, you could probably get by with some smaller or older stuff, and some of our tractors are older, and some of them are a little newer than the others, but you got to have that. If you're farming, you got to have tractors. You got to be able to do stuff. So my point is, farming is expensive. Anything is, but for us, we're taking a seed all the way to a finished product and putting it on your table. And so even after harvest, we've got to have coolers, we've got to have pea shellers. All that is stuff that breaks and has to be maintained and serviced, and it's a lot, and I'm not complaining. Obviously I'd want it to be cheaper, but I just would like people to know. And I think if some of the people that came that are my customers really knew how much dollars it was, they might understand why we charge what we do. Most of the people don't complain at all. Some people will complain, and when they do, it makes me think, well, if you knew what was all involved and how much it costs, you probably wouldn't say anything. Well, something I was thinking about, I thought some people might be interested, and I'm sure I left some stuff out, and I'll probably think of it later. But that'll give you an idea, maybe not necessarily on the numbers, but just all of the things that farmers have to pay for. And like I said, I'm different than maybe the guy down the road. He has to pay for, more of one thing and less than the other. But for what I do, though, it takes a lot of equipment and a lot of labor. A lot of these row crop farmers, now they'll have bigger and more equipment than I will, but they can get by with maybe just, minimal labor, and because it's all mechanical. So that'll just, maybe pique your interest a little bit on what we talked about. And I would challenge you, or not challenge you, maybe just appreciate it if you would watch us throughout the whole year and really get a sense of what goes on. It's late January. We'll be in the field. It's wet now. As soon as we can get back out there, and probably once March gets here, I'll start putting out videos maybe every week. Up until then, I'll just have one here and there when we do something new. So anyway, thank y'all so much for watching. Subscribe to us if you have not, and we will see y'all next time.